Hello felting friends, welcome to this week's video. This week we're going to make this lovely little set of fish, and I wasn't sure if I was even going to be able to make it. It was a bit of a challenge, and I thought this might be one of those fail videos I was going to be putting out. But fortunately I muddled through and we ended up with this. So if you want to see how it's done, follow me and we'll take a little dive together and I'll show you how it's made. So I started out with a little glass dish that I have here, and I made a rough idea of what I wanted out of pipe cleaners so that I could get a measurement for the wire. So I haven't given measurements particularly because it depends how big you want the wire things and it depends how big you want your fish. But my wire here is 1.6 millimeters. You just want something that you know is going to support a needle felted fish really and isn't going to flop everywhere. So what I did was I measured my little dish, which is actually the top of a coffee jar. It's one of those ceiling coffee jars you can get, and I took the plastic thing off that on the lid and turned it upside down. So that's what I've got here. And all I've done is decide on the bend in the wire at the bottom. I measured the bottom of the jar and I made it so that each piece of wire took up half that space, if you know what I mean, so that it stood in the jar in the end. So the first thing I did, if you saw me last time when I had a go, I made the little plant and I couldn't get the wool to stick, so I changed tactic and I'm trying a different glue. This is just tacky glue, so I'm just using a cocktail stick and I'm putting the glue up and all over the wire that we have here, and this worked much better. I've got a much better grip. So I'm starting at the bottom and I'm pulling my wire thin, any green will do, any green you fancy, and I'm just winding it around tightly onto this wire. And you can start from the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top, whichever you want. I started this way because I had something not gluey to hold on to. And just wind it all the way to the top. But this tacky glue works so much better. Last time I tried a glue stick and it really didn't have enough stick for what I wanted. But you can see I'm just pulling thin bits. So when I attach an extra bit like that, I start above where I want to wind. And so I'm holding it above where I'm going to wind, and then I take the wool slightly below it so that as I wind up I'm wrapping the end into it as well. I hope that makes sense. So I have a question to ask as we go through this, so ponder it as we go through the video. I've decided I've enjoyed this so much, I'm going to make a fish tank's worth. And I've been out and I've bought a little plastic fish tank. And I think I want to, what I'm doing here is I'm allowing an inch at the top because I'm going to bend that over to stick into the fish, if you wonder what I'm doing. Anyway, so I'm going to make a whole fish tank because I enjoyed it. And I'm thinking I might make it, rather than the goldfish tank, these will be in a separate little thing, I might make a marine tank. Now, if you're not sure what a marine tank is, it's just a tank that has like dory and clownfish and coral, all that sort of tank. Because I thought there was quite a lot of interesting coloured fish, and we've got the coral and anemones and shrimps and all those sort of things. So if that sounds like something you'd like to see me make, then let me know in the comments, because I am going to make it just for me because I really want to. But if you think you'd like to see it as a video or a little series of videos, then let me know in the comments and I will film it for you. So that's the tank I'm thinking of doing. Right, back to this. So I've decided on the size of a fish. Again, I can't give you the measurements because it depends what size you want to do this. But just find yourself a picture of a fish on Google or something. And all I'm doing then is, you can see I just drew a real simple fish. I'm just making the body, so I tied it in a knot first because that means you have to do less actual felting. And I'm just going to shape this body until I get the shape I like. And again, I haven't given you a drawing because there are so many different shaped goldfish. So it's really depending on what kind of goldfish you want. But you can take all this basic principle and take it to any shape fish you like, really. Make sure the fish is fairly firm when you felt it, because we've got to stick a wire in it, so you don't want a soft fluffy fish. And then just picked the colour that I fancied for the goldfish and just cover it all over. If you have a look at your pictures of goldfish, there's loads and loads on Google to choose from. There's lots of different colours as well. You can have all, multicoloured, or even just plain black goldfish if you want to, or white goldfish. So choose yourself the style of goldfish, or I should say breed really, shouldn't I, and the colour that you fancy, and then create that one for yourself. And now I've got the pin in because I wanted to mark the centre of the top. So it's not the centre of the fish, it's the central line that runs along the top of the fish. So I could work on the shape, and I know where the top and the bottom is. So that's really all I'm using the template for, is because I decided the size of the fish I wanted. And now I'm marking in, obviously, where the eye is going to go. Now I've used a pin again because I want to make sure that when I do it, my eyes are going to be level, and that I like where the eye is. So I marked it first with a pin, and I'll put that eye in. And I noticed goldfish eyes are actually really interesting. So the one I looked at had like a darker gold bit if you think of the background of the eye, and then it had a white area, and then it had the black pupil of the eye. And I also noticed, because you might see me put in, but when the fish is looking forward, if you look at the back part of the eye that we're putting on, you can see just a touch of like white or silver. So it's like the eye tips out from the head, and you can just see this little bit of colour, like white, silver, whatever. So if you see me putting a strand in a minute at the back of the eye, that's why, because it made the eye in real life look like it's looking forward. Right, so here I'm just measuring up where I'm going to put the other eye to make sure it's level, and so I checked it from the top and the front. And my little goldfish that I was using as a reference had a slightly white underbelly around his face, which is why it's got a little bit of white at the bottom. Because you learn when you go and study these things that I'm making, I'm talking about me now, you learn so much, because I've actually had goldfish as pets for years, and I've never really looked at them closely in the same way that I was doing for this, and I'd never really noticed that little whitey bit that as they turn their eyes, and you can see, you just look at the fish and it's a fish, but actually things are fascinating when you stop and study them. And then I'm still shaping it. It took a little while to shape it because I needed a firm fish that actually looked fish-like. And I did add a little bit of extra darker gold on it because that's what my fish had. And I'm going to make some gills. I was just marking out roughly where I wanted them to be. But you could just leave them marked like that, not put the gills in, but I wanted an extra, I wanted the gills really to lift away from the body a little bit. So this is that little funny silver bit, or white bit, right at the back of the eye. And it doesn't go right round the eye, it's just a bit that's tipped out from the head. You could leave this bit off, it's just that I really do like to do as much detail when I'm doing something as I can. But no one would notice if you didn't put it in. So this is me just making the gills now. Yeah, so I decided to turn the whole thing into a proper fish tank, and I went out and I managed to find a slightly damaged, it was quite a big 21-litre plastic fish tank, but it was slightly damaged because its lid had been, I don't know, someone had dropped it on the floor in the shop or something. Make sure you use a card for this. And I managed to get it half price, so I felt that that was fate saying I needed to make the tank. So I was quite pleased with that. So I have this tank now, and I did put the goldfish in it, and then I thought, oh, it looks nice with the goldfish idea, but I really think I want to do this marine one because there's so many colours and things. So I say, don't forget to let me know in the comments if you fancy watching me make the marine tank. So again, I'm studying my picture of where the gills go on the fish, just making sure I get them in the right place. And I only want the very back bit to lift off, and I want the front of the gill to just blend completely in with the face as it does in the picture I have. And all the time I'm making sure that I'm not felting it out of shape for my fish, and I keep going back and just checking it and refining it. I mean, it's not too bad because these little goldfish, there's all different shapes, so if you don't make a absolutely perfect shaped goldfish, I don't think anybody would notice. Not really. So I made the fin above this one, as you can see. This is going to be his tail, and this is how I did it. I've got some roving or tops, and I've pulled it thinly. I mean, it's thick enough that there's going to be a little bit of body to it, but it's thin enough that it's kind of still wispy at the ends. So if you've got some rovings or tops, this would be great to do this. You can do this with your carded wool as well, because this, what I'm putting on now, is just carded. So I'm just layering it down really. So if you didn't have the roving, you could just do the whole thing in carded wool. And the reason I'm doing two is I want to sandwich them together because I want the tail to support itself. So it's quite thin. You'll see how when I peel it up, it's not thick at all. And on the back here, because I've used roving tops, I've taken a little bit of white carded wool, and I'm just putting that on the back to help hold it together. But it is quite thin and wispy. And then I need to just check that it's going to match up with the other tail there. So what I'm doing here is I don't want the white in the middle really, so I'm cutting out some of that because I want it to blend into the goldfish's body. And if I have a lot of white there, you're going to end up with a white line. So then just cut it as short or as long as you want to make it, so it fits the body like this. And then we'll just basically felt that to the fish. Once you're happy where it is, just felt it to the fish. I forgot to mention as well, I actually had 4 wires that I wrapped. I wanted two to support the fish themselves, because well, in fact I was going to make 3 fish, but I didn't have time or I wouldn't have got the video up, so I made the 2 fish. But I had basically 2 wires to support the fish plus an extra wire which I didn't use to support the fish in the end, and then a wire that I wasn't sure how I wanted to put a leaf. I was going to put a leaf around the wire, so that's why there's 4 wires. Plus also, obviously, I want it to be stable in my little glass jar, and if I'd had 3 wires, it wouldn't have been as stable. If I didn't use that little glass jar lid bit, it would have been more difficult to keep the structure upright. So if you don't have something you want to do it into, you'll need to weight it down in some way. Even if it's just get some pebbles and weight it down that way. I never glued it. Oh, this is me obviously just shaping the tail of the fish how I want it. I never glued these into the jar because I want to be able to take them out and change the scenery, change them around. So that's why I hadn't glued it in when you see this. Now I'm just popping in his little mouth. But you could, if you've even, you could get yourself something that's flat, even a little flat piece of cardboard, glue the wires onto the cardboard, you'll see nearer the end, and then maybe glue a few pebbles or something to the base, so you hide the wire and it looks a bit like it's at the bottom of a tank or the bottom of a river. As I say, I haven't glued mine down because I'm going to do something more with it, I think, later on. So this is where see my fish is quite firm now, and that's the sort of inch or something I've allowed at the top. Again, that's going to depend, the amount you allow depends on the size of fish, and I'm just bending it over to the angle I want the fish to swim at. And as you see, I bent the wire as well, just so it looked less, it was more fluid, and then so it's just a case of deciding which way you want your fish to swim and which side looks better, because that's the side that's going to face you. And then carefully get yourself a pokey thing, an awl like this or something else, a pair of scissors, and go into the side that's going to be at the back. You can actually attach it with underneath the fish if you want to. I just did the side like this so that it actually wouldn't show at all. And what you could do, which I hadn't done because I didn't want to do anything with the fish. There you go, look, it's fab. But to see this back here, once I decide my final arrangement, I will glue the fish onto the wire, and I will carry on with a little bit more green up the side of the fish so it completely blends in and you don't see where the wire goes in. Now I'm making the back fin for the fish. So again, that's going to be whatever shape you want your fin, because when you look at the goldfish there's lots of different shapes as well. But I wanted to keep the first one quite simple. So I've done the white, and this is all quite thin obviously, and then obviously got the gold in because I want the gold to blend down onto the fish's body. And I'm using the card here just to make the edge of the white part of the fin a little more defined. But I've got that bit of gold on both sides, so that as we did with the tail, I can split it apart and use it to hold down the fish, hold on to the fish. I'm just really checking the length of it, whether I like the length, whether I like the height of the little fin. So you see I've just pulled that orange pit apart, and I'm now going to blend that down onto the fish's body. I try not to work in a mess, but it just seems to get progressively worse as I go along. So just watch your fingers here. So having done all that with the edge, I then cut it all off. But as you'll see later on, that doesn't matter. It's more important that you get the shape you like right now. And if you've needle felted it quite firmly, it won't matter. So this is just another goldfish body I'm making. And as you can see, I've looked online and I liked the orange, black and white ones. So this is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm creating myself an orange, black and white goldfish. And I was so excited I got started on the colour before I actually really checked the shape of the fish, which is naughty, don't do that. So now I'm having to pop back in and just actually improve the shape of the fish. It wasn't long enough or fish shape enough really. So I'm using some core wool, as you can see, that's why that's cream, and I just wrap some white around it. So just take your time and keep just refining the shape, and make sure you look at it from all angles, because as it's a freestanding little fish, people will see it from above or from the sides and from the front. So have a look at it as you go along and keep checking that all angles you're happy with. So I was just blobbing on colours wherever I thought they looked right. And again, we're back to the eyes again now. So it's the same thing. I put in a little orange blob and then I will build the eye up. So the fish I saw when I was using a reference picture had black circles around his eyes, and I liked the look of that, so that's what I've added them here. So I've done the goldy bit, then I've done the white bit, and then I'm putting this little black pupil on now. And this one I tried popping a little white highlight on the eyes. When I look at both goldfish, I don't think it makes a lot of difference either way. So you can add a little white dot just to where it's catching the light if you want to. But honestly, I don't think it matters. So if you feel like adding it, it's always a nice little extra touch. But if you don't feel like adding that bit, then don't worry. Again, just lining up the eyes and things. And make sure, as always, that you check it from above and the front. Well, I hope you're enjoying this this little project. If you are, please don't forget to give me a like and a subscribe if you fancy some more strange makes. I never know what I'm going to make. I mean, this week again I've done this one and I have no idea what I'm making next week, so I'm always up for suggestions as well. I'm trying to make things that are a little different that you wouldn't normally have, but I am going to run out of ideas eventually, so I'm always open for more ideas. Again, I've just made the gills and popped those on, and I'm blending it in with a little black this time. and a little mouth. They all have such sad mouths. So we're going to do the same thing now with this fish, and that's, I had a look at my fish. I'm just checking them out. I had a look at my fish to decide which side I liked the best. Obviously, I don't want that straight. And whichever side I like the best is the side, obviously, that's going to be at the front. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to make a hole in the poor little fish and stick him on his thing. I will be taking them off again. So I haven't glued either of these fish on. I'm just popping them on to see if I like what's happening. So this is how I made the fins stick out. I've got, this is the glossy, I can't remember exact words, but it's the shiny Mod Podge. You could use the matte one if you've got it. I don't think it made a difference whether it was the shiny one. I can't remember what it's called now. But anyway, yeah, it's the Mod Podge. So I've just gone over both sides of the fins with this because that meant, it was an experiment, I wasn't sure it was going to work. But what I wanted to be able to do was shape the fins a little bit. So I thought, because they're thin, if I use this first, then as it dries, I can dry the fins, if necessary, over something like pencils and things, and it will give them a bit of a wave. So with this fin, it wasn't too bad. I let it dry partially, and then I just shaped them a bit. And that's why when you look at the final picture, the fins have a little bit of movement to them. I was just trying things here, but I will, once they're properly dry, I will go back and just trim the fins up a little bit. But I did the tail and I do the dorsal fin on the back as well. But these were, although this one still worked, because it was small enough, I could shape it a bit. So this is what I did. And then I actually stuck it back on the little wire and propped it up and left it to dry. It took about an hour to dry, but while this was dry, you can go on and deal with the other fish, so it doesn't matter. So now I'm building up the other fish, these fins and that. And I want to do, you'll see, this is how I do the long tail on the other fish. It was basically done in exactly the same way. But because I knew I wanted a long tail, I've got slightly thicker white on it. And I do this, later on I've got to do the little side fins and things, and I'll do it all exactly the same way. But I'm not gluing the orange bit because that's the bit I'm going to use to felt onto the body. So I'm just putting this glue over the white area. So make sure you stay off the bit that you're going to glue onto the body. The fins on this fish, I actually put on the fish first, and then I'm trying to think. So these fins I made first on the fish, like I did the other one, and then I glued them and left them to dry and shaped them over some pencils and things. And the bit that you just saw me make which is what's on the side here now, is what I'm using. I cut out a little template to see if I like the size, and they're what I'm using to make the fins. I hope that makes sense. So the tail on the big fish was done the same way I did the tail on the small fish, but I made it a lot longer, I glued it, and I shaped it over some pens. This is what I'm trying to say. And then the bit I made, that you saw me make, I'm using to make all the little extra fins for this fish and the other fish. And I did find that even though I got the glue, which is dry, on the fins, if I went over the top of it, I could stab through it and fit it to the fish's body. So because they were thin enough, the wool went through it and still attached it to the body. So it wasn't too bad that they had a little bit of dry glue on it, wasn't wet. If any of this isn't making sense, just ask me in the comment and I'll write out a better explanation, as I say, because sometimes I do kind of waffle and I miss the point, I think. I don't know. But anyway, so here I'm doing exactly the same thing with the back fin. Because I've got this already made, I can cut myself any... I wasn't sure that I was going to have a long streaming back fin as well, which is why I'd made this extra bit. But again, done the same way. I've got orange on both sides and I'm going to fit that onto the back of the fish. But the glue was really handy to use. I'm going to definitely use it for other things as well, because if you look at the tail of that fish, I managed to shape it. I let it dry over some pens with a plastic bag at the top, so it did stick to the pens. And it worked really well. Right, so I'm now making some wide leaves for the bottom of the tank, and I just used pipe cleaners to get a rough size that I like the length of, and then I could pull it apart like that, and I got some quite wide little leaves, which was nice. And I know that because they're pipe cleaners, I'll be able to wrap the end around the metal, the wire base that I've got. So this is pretty straightforward. It's just make it to the width you like and then just pop some wool over it. This wool I've got here is a mixture of colours, which was quite handy, but if you have a solid coloured green, just mix some bits of black or paler green and things like that into it, just so you've got a little bit of variety. So I'm just doing different size ones. If you can use black pipe cleaners, it's easier because it doesn't show in the same way. I had to work a little bit on this one because I kept seeing that luminous green coming through, but it wasn't a problem. I just had to pay attention. Right, so now you can see I've constructed it roughly. I've wrapped all the pipe cleaners around the base of the wires, and each wire, so it looks like a cross. The wires, the 4 wires go off in different directions, and now I'm just stuffing the little jar with some brown wool, and I had these pebbles, which I thought was quite nice, so I've just popped these over the top. Again, for me this is temporary because I'm going to put this in a little fish tank as well at some point. But it gave a nice weight to the jars. There you go. And I think it's really nice. I haven't glued it in, and they're temporary pebbles, but you could use this as a permanent feature just like this. You just want that extra bit of weight, and if you're going to leave it like this, then make sure you do glue it in place. But I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a like, please subscribe, and don't forget to leave me comments if you'd like to see the way I make this pretend marine tank with the fish and coral and things like that. Let me know in the comments, because that really will determine whether I film it or I just make it for myself. You might enjoy one of the videos on the screen now as well, and otherwise I'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.